Okay, it's Sunday, so it's time to play some fighting games and answer some questions. We start on the replay menu instead of in the replay today because the first question is the burning hot question of which Overwatch heroes could I take in a fight? So we've got the tier list maker ready for this one, with all the obvious categories. Would end my bloodline, would need to surpass my limits, fair fight, they'd get a few hits in, and I would end their bloodline. And we're gonna go through all of them. Starting with Grandma. Anybody who thinks Grandma's free is a fool. You can't tell me Grandma doesn't know how to fight. I might be stronger than Grandma, but Grandma's got experience. That's a fair fight. Ashe, she'd get a few hits in, and also I'm assuming this is with no weapons included, because otherwise they'd all end my bloodline. So Ashe, as long as Bob's not there, I'm getting her. Like, she's getting got. I just gotta get her. Bob would pose a problem, because if Bob's there, there's no chance in hell. But just Ashe, I could take her. Baptiste, he's pretty jacked actually, but I think I could take him. I'm pretty sure I could take him. Bastion is literally a robot. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna punch fucking steel? There's no chance. I'm but a regular human. It can't be done. Bridget, I would need to surpass my limits to take Bridget. She's undeniably significantly stronger than me. But I think she's too gullible, you know? She's too naive. I think I could take her in a fight as long as I was prepared to fight dirty, basically. Doomfist, no chance. He'd end my bloodline. Diva, I'd snap her like a twig. There's no chance in hell Diva's putting up any kind of fight. Now, Echo is a robot, but I think it's possible I could take Echo. It would still be very difficult, but Echo, while being a robot, is kind of a weaselly little robot, right? Like, she's not a big, scary robot. I think it's possible I could take Echo, but it would be very difficult. Genji is tempting to say I could possibly take him in some world, but then I think about it from a different perspective. If I was talking about Metal Gear's Raiden, I would never in a million years expect to be able to take him. And that's basically who Genji is. So realistically, there's no chance I could take Genji. Hammond, on the other hand, is like 2 feet tall. I would pound him into a paste. Hanzo, now, I actually think Hanzo would be a fair fight. Hanzo's, like, while he is probably better at fighting than me, to be honest with you, I just think Hanzo's kind of a bitch and I don't respect him. So I think I could take Hanzo. I think that's a fair fight. Junkrat, I'd kick his peg leg out from under him and then what's he gonna do? Huh? What's he gonna do then? I think Lucio is tempting to say you could realistically take him, right? But he's actually kind of jacked. Like, he's not, like, ripped or anything. But I would be more scared of fighting Lucio than Baptiste. Lucio, at least, I know Lucio knows how to fight, right? My man at least does capoeira. Baptiste, not so confident he actually knows how to fight. Lucio, that's a fair fight. McCree, be honest, he'd probably take me. He could probably take me. May, she'd get a few hits in, but like, you know, she's tanky, you get what I mean? But she doesn't know how to fight. She doesn't know how to fight. Mercy, I'd end her. I'd snap her like a twig. Moira, same deal. Snap her like a twig. They're too like rail thin. They'd put up no resistance if you could get your hands on them. Orisa, big robot. No, I couldn't take a centaur and I couldn't take a robot. She's both things. There's no chance in hell. Farah, no chance in hell. There's no way. Reaper is like a demon, right? Like, he's like a demon. Do I think I could take a demon? I think I could take a demon. Reinhardt, there's no chance. He'd end me straight up. Roadhog, also no. Like, Roadhog, the thing is with Roadhog is it would be a really terrible fight as well. It'd be one of those deals where he'd put his hand on my forehead and just hold me back, and then what am I gonna do, right? Like, it'd be terrible. Toes? I think I could take Toes pretty reliably. He's the only tank, in fact, that wouldn't end my bloodline. All the others would. Big robot, big strong German man, big strong New Zealander, actual Olympic athlete that fights using mounted weaponry in her bare hands, and a literal gorilla. There's no chance you take any of the tanks except Toes. Toes is just kind of a dude, you know? Like, he's a big dude, sure, but like, it feels like Toes wouldn't realistically be that hard to take, you know? Unless, like, again, we give him the purview of weapons, sure. You know, he's gonna spaghettify me. But otherwise, I'm taking Toes. Soldier is very unlikely I could take Soldier. Right? Like, he's dad strong, and also is like a super soldier, you know? It's not happening. Sombra, I'd snap her like a twig. Symmetra, she'd probably get a few hits in, but again, she's too like rail thin, right? Like, if you get her, you've got her. Torbjorn, no chance in hell. There's no way, absolutely no way in hell I'm taking Torbjorn. Who could possibly stand up to this? This is peak male performance. It can't be done. Tracer is like a fair fight. The thing is with Tracer is it's like, if you can get your hands on Tracer, you've basically won the fight, but like, it's the getting your hands on Tracer, right? It'd be like that part of Dragon Ball Z where Trunks is fighting Cell, and Trunks gets like super jacked partway through that fight, and Cell's like, you know, in all fairness, you are probably stronger than me right now, but you're too fucking slow, bitch. You can't catch me, so I'm gonna still dunk on you. You know, it's like that. If you get her, you got her. But you've gotta get her. Widowmaker is one of those where it's like, I bet most people are like, yeah, I could totally take Widowmaker, look at her. But like, have you seen that Tracer short? Like, there's no way in hell any normal human being is actually going to fight Widowmaker and win. It's like what she does. It's why she's blue. She's like designed to kill people, you know? There's no way. That's a tempting one to say, oh yeah, I could take Widowmaker. Look at her. She's rail thin like all the other ones I could end. The problem is like none of those people know how to fight. Widowmaker very clearly knows how to fight. Do you think you could take Black Widow? No, you don't. You can't take Widowmaker either. And Zenyatta is a literal robot. He's like closer to the Echo spectrum on like the scale of the robot, but you know my man knows how to fight. There's no way Robot Monk can't fight. I still to this day wish that if you killed someone with Zenyatta's melee attack, they went flying into the stratosphere. That's absolutely how it should be, and Jeff won't answer my emails. And there's the definitive list of who I could fight in Overwatch. And the answer is, you know, a few of them, but like most of them would probably kick my ass. You know, a lot of them are pretty rigged. You know, you've got the ones that are like, ah yes, 150 pounds, or like 90 pounds, 150 health, never fought a day in her life outside of a mech, you know, tiny hamster. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like literal superhumans and a gorilla. Also robots. So there you go. That's who I could fight. Now, begin the gameplay. There you go. Now, next question. Ah, it's the wrong tab. There we go. Next question is, that's the wrong tab in Discord as well, and that's too loud. What was your first time playing D&D like as a player and as a DM? As a DM, you were there for that one, so you should know that one. Without getting too in-depth into that one, I had fun, but I don't think it turned out especially well. As a player, I have only faint recollections of this because I was like 17 at the time when I first played D&D. I was very young. Yeah, this is over a decade ago at this point. There wasn't too much to say about it, as it was a very dungeon crawly kind of game, like the olden styles of D&D used to be. There wasn't too much on the way of like narrative story stuff. I played a paladin because paladins were dope. And as I recall, we died to like, it was like an ogre or something. It was like some fairly unremarkable creature. There wasn't too much to report. I was left with not super stoked about D&D at the end of that, but like then after that I got with like a different group of people, and that was more like the modern style of D&D, which was more like narrative focused. It was still like this like fairly old module that we played, but it was based on Alice in Wonderland. So there's like, you go to like the Mad Hatter's tea party, and if you fight the Mad Hatter, you're like fucking dead because the rabbit is like a 20th level monk. It's still very much like one of those modules that's like trying to kill you, as all the old modules basically were. But that was a much more enjoyable experience. I liked that one a lot more. I played a bard. I did fight the Mad Hatter's rabbit. I didn't win. What the fuck is the right button, right? Oh, I'm not in the right tab. That's why it's not working. Good thing I didn't just end the recording over there. I did fight the rabbit. I didn't win. Because we weren't level 20 and I was a bard. I'm not meant to fight a monk regardless. It was a good time. I had more fun with that one, and that was got me more into D&D. But like my actual first experience was like, yeah, none all that too exciting as a player. That's the thing with D&D, is it's mostly determined, like, what your impression of D&D is going to be is basically determined by the group of people that you play with. Cause like some people, like, they have a real bad first experience with D&D and then they just never play it again. You know, it's unfortunate, but it's just that kind of, you know. D&D is kind of funny like this because it doesn't so much have this anymore, but it used to have the stigma attached to it that only like really nerdy, antisocial people play D&D. But, like, D&D is, like, basically the one thing you absolutely can't do alone, right? It's weird it got an antisocial stigma attached to it because it is extremely a group activity. You cannot play D&D alone. So, it's kind of weird that it got that stigma attached to it. Anyway, that's besides the point. I still prefer playing. It's, you know, DMing is frankly more work than I'm prepared to put in most of the time, but it's like, fuck, you don't do that, you don't play D&D at all. Alright, well, I guess I will, fine, Jesus Christ. Ugh. There you go. Next up, how to think when positioning, which is a pretty frequent question. Positioning's quite hard because it's something you're doing all the time, and occupies a lot of thought. And, like, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to position somewhere that maximizes your threat while minimizing personal risk, which varies a lot from person to person. If you're playing Anna, you want to be generally kind of far back, but not so far back that you're completely isolated. Also, the further back you are, the harder it is to use your abilities. So you don't want to be too far back, but you also don't want to be, like, super close. Because Anna is at her worst when people are right on top of her. So you gotta kind of, like, learn to toe this line. And then high ground is obviously really good. Soldier, you want to be super far away. Not quite sniper far away, but like one step below sniper far away. On high ground, preferably. You know, but if you're playing like Orisa, Orisa's positioning is actually pretty complicated. Like, low-key. Because she's a tank, obviously, so she's got to be pretty forward. But at the same time, Orisa is also at her worst when people are right on top of her. So you've got to toe this line where you're, like, close enough to be a front line, but also far enough back that you get to grind people down a little while they're approaching you, right? Orisa's positioning is actually really complicated. Unless she's playing with another main tank, by which I basically mean Reinhardt. In which case, you can pretty much just let Reinhardt main tank, and then you can do one of two things, which is either basically be where he is, but a bit further back and support him, or you go stand with the DPS and just, like, basically pocket them, which is really strong on maps like Numbani. If you've got, like, Reinhardt over on the main balcony that people like to go up, push up through and fight, and then you've got Orisa over on the other balcony with, like, a Soldier, a Baptiste, and Anna, that's actually super fucking strong and obnoxious to deal with. It's not strictly optimal if we're talking about, like, really high-level play, but, like, it's really fucking good, you know? It makes it very difficult to deal with those DPS because they're in their strong position, and then there's also, like, a fucking 600 health shield and a tank up there as well supporting them. Plus all of them supporting each other as well, you know? So, like, positioning is very complicated in summation. It's all very map dependent, and it's all very character dependent as well, because how you position on certain maps also varies. Because Soldier is very far back on high ground, but, like, not every map has high ground, so you can't always take advantage of this, and even if there is high ground, it's not, strictly speaking, incredible high ground. Like, Gibraltar's second checkpoint, the high ground kind of sucks for the most part. Like, it seems like it should be really strong, and it is, with, like, 3 asterisks attached to it. The problem is that it's all, like, really far forward, so it's, like, quite easy to get got if you're up there by yourself, unless you're on, like, the back part, really close to the second set of hangar doors. But the problem there is that, like, the enemy has to be far enough forward that you can see them from there to begin with. So, like, what it ends up being that, like, yeah, you want to be on the high ground, but sometimes it's also better to just be, like, in the doorway next to, like, the large health kit. Not even on the high ground, but, like, you can retreat really easily. There's the health kit there. It gives you a nice long line of sight. As long as you don't think, like, 4 people are gonna run into the room and gank you, you know, that can always happen, but positioning's real complicated. And then you got McCree, who wants to do similar stuff to Soldier, but obviously shorter range than him. But sometimes what takes precedence for McCree instead is not the, your personal positioning, like, to optimize your efficiency, but positioning so that you can protect your teammates, because McCree also has a bodyguarding aspect. So sometimes you forgo your own personal positioning so that you can support your teammates better instead. It's really complicated, but basically, on this most core level, you're trying to be in a position that maximizes your strength while minimizing your personal risk. If you just think about it like that, you can kind of figure it out for the most part. It takes a lot of thought, you know? This is why positioning is really important to work on, because it does occupy a lot of thought. So the faster you can sort of get positioning into muscle memory, the better. Because eventually you don't need to think about it after you've thought about it enough. Because eventually you can just sort of go like, the fight's turning one way or another, and you know that you should advance or move back depending on the situation. You can just kind of like feel it out. You know what positions on maps are generally good. Because there's only a finite amount of good positions on a map for a character. With a few like wildcard positions that are sometimes good to be in. but it's fairly finite for the most part. Like, you could realistically go through each map, like, map by map, like, just without, like, in a custom game, and, like, kind of be like, oh, this is a really good line of sight, you know, stuff like that. Because the maps are all finite spaces, and all fights occur along a set track, so there's only so many places that can realistically be good. But the sooner you get that into muscle memory, the sooner you can start thinking about other things. It's one of those, like, core fundamentals that, like, is really hard to get your head around to begin with. But then once it becomes second nature, it becomes so much easier to play the game, because now you can think about all the other shit that's going on, without having to worry about where your feet are, you know? This is true in every game as well. This isn't just Overwatch either. All games basically have positioning rules that you need to learn. MOBA's very positioning based as well. Fighting games also super positional based. You've got to figure out like what your like optimal range on your abilities is, and you got to get used to all your opponent's ranges as well, and then you get to play footsies because you know what each other's ranges are. It's just one of those things that like every game you play, you need to learn positioning, and it's kind of a task to learn. But then once you do learn it, it's like, oh, thank God I don't have to worry about that shit anymore. That's fucking dealt with. Thank God. That was a pain in the neck. Anyway, it's 21 minutes, and we've only done one question. Damn, I was talking about who I could fight for a long time. So we're probably not going to get through all these questions today. I'm going down instead of up in the replays, which we don't want to do. I played against that Nagoriyuki a lot. Because we were, like, relatively equal skill, you know, that's what you do. You play against the people you're close to, and you play against the people that are way better than you. The people that you're way better than, feels good to play against them, but you don't really get anything out of it. So, you know, anyway, next. High amounts of damage on tank, good or bad? So this is one of those things that, like, people always reveal how little they actually know about playing tank when they say this, which is, I have gold damage, what the fuck DPS? It's actually extremely easy to have gold damage on basically every tank. With exceptions, like, it's kind of hard to have it on Hammond, because Hammond's a little more skill intensive. Zarya as well, but if you're just like competent on Zarya, it's pretty easy to have gold damage. Because here's the thing, right? Here's the thing with tanks. They're all meant to do high amounts of damage, right? Because the thing is, people think about it in this really fucking arbitrary way, which is tank do no damage, it just stop man. DPS just do damage, it don't stop man, it don't heal. And support, it heal. It don't stop man, and it don't do damage. None of these things are true. All of the roles have overlap with each other. Because here's the thing as well, right? It's actually support, it's not healer. This is the other thing. All roles have overlap with each other. None of them are so straightforward. Tanks are meant to do high amounts of damage, because if they didn't, they fundamentally wouldn't work. Because if Reinhardt did, just say, regular melee damage on his swing, right? 25-30 damage per swing. Why would you ever respect where Reinhardt's standing? You wouldn't. Why would you? He doesn't do any damage. There's no reason I can't just walk right past him. Same deal with Winston, right? Like, he doesn't do a huge amount of damage straight up, obviously, but, like, he's gonna kill you. Like, if you're a DPS or a healer, he's gonna kill you pretty quickly. And he's doing AoE damage as well. Like, he's hitting multiple of you at once. Roadhog is, like, practically an assassin. Like, he's practically a DPS with big health bar. Everybody knows this. Zarya is also basically a DPS with a big health bar. Everybody knows this. Like, it's very strange that people are just like, come on, dog, I got gold damage DPS, what the fuck? Regardless of the fact you're playing fucking Roadhog and you just whole hogged into a Graviton. Yeah, I fucking wonder why you have gold damage, fucking genius. Jesus Christ. Tanks are meant to do high damage. It's the whole point of the role. They do high damage, but they do it in a fairly limited way, right? Like, that's the thing, is it's like, DPS are broadly defined by the fact that they can fight in a wide variety of circumstances. Tanks do a really high amount of damage, but in a really finite number of circumstances. Reinhardt does a lot of damage, but you have to be right next to him for him to do this damage. Roadhog does a lot of damage, but you have to be within, like, 3 sets of perfect ranges for him, right? Hook range, right-click range, left-click range, or Roadhog doesn't do any damage to you. Because you gotta be within one of those 3, like, danger zones. D.Va does a lot of damage, but it's cooldown-based. She's very ability-based. Zarya does a lot of damage, but it's resource-gated. She needs high energy. Winston does a lot of damage, provided he doesn't get interrupted, right? Like, they all do very high damage. It's just restricted in some way. That's the thing. It's very easy to have high damage on tank, particularly while you're playing in low ranks. Because, to be frank, you don't know how to play a tank. You only know charge in, hitman with hammer. Earth shatter, hitman with hammer. You don't know how to use your shield yet. Like, as you get higher ranked, you generally have lower damage as a tank because the other team's better at responding to you. Like, you can't just run in and swing at people because they will fucking clap your cheeks for doing that. And even then, you might still have gold damage because you died really quickly, but you actually did a lot of damage before you died, and your team just got killed because you didn't provide any damage mitigation whatsoever, so they just got, like, blasted behind you. But you pinned their Reinhardt and then swung at, like, 4 people, so you did, like, close to 1,000 damage, even though you died almost instantly. It's actually very easy to have gold damage on a tank, particularly when you aren't playing like you're a tank. So that's always the one thing that people who say that while they're playing tank immediately reveal how little they actually know about playing tank. Or they just want to shit talk, which I understand. But yeah, like, having high damage on a tank is actually meaningless. Like, it actually is completely irrelevant how much damage you've done on tank. They all do a lot of damage. Next up, why should I use voice chat or text chat when 70% of period Y games are full of toxicity? Yes, that is how he wrote it. I'm guessing he just meant what my, but he put period. It's not even comma, which is at least right next to M. Anyway. So, yeah, both forms of chat are, like, a complete waste of time. So, text chat, you can completely turn it off and you actually lose nothing. Because here's the thing with text chat, is it exists purely for fighting. There's nothing that you can communicate meaningfully in text chat, because it takes too long to do. Text chat exists purely for arguing and shit-talking. There's nothing else that can be done with text chat. The communication method is too slow to be productive. So you can turn text chat off and lose absolutely nothing. And I argue the exact same thing for voice chat. Because here's the thing. Communication's a skill, and most people that are complaining about voice chat do not know how to communicate. How many times have you played a game where someone is complaining that people aren't in voice chat, then you join voice chat, and this is what you hear? Oh, Jesus Christ. That's it. That's it. Communication's a skill. Most people don't have it. All you hear in voice chat most of the time is bitching and like, oh, he's won, with no further elaboration on who he is, where he is, or if your team is even alive for it to fucking matter, right? That's it. That's all that you hear in most voice chat. Communication's a skill, and most people do not have that skill. You will also lose basically nothing by not joining voice chat. It's just an easy thing to point at and go, that's why we lost. We had a guy that wasn't in voice chat. That's the problem. Said the guy playing Bastion while his tanks are Zarya and Roadhog. Anyway, so yeah, both methods of communication are a complete waste of time, and you can completely cut yourself off from both of them, and you'll be absolutely fine and lose nothing. In fact, your life will be significantly improved, actually, because you don't have to listen to the Overwatch community, who are fucking awful. I never used either form of chat other than to argue. And I did just fine. You'll also do just fine, because I'm bad. You're probably less bad than me. I also like to argue a lot, so, you know, that's another thing that holds me back. Anyway, yeah, both forms of chat are a waste of time. Until you get to, like, really high SR where people actually know how to communicate, then it's maybe worth it, but even then, I still say fuck it. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, Overwatch is not that complicated of a game. You're not realistically arranging anything huge in Overwatch, at least not on the fucking ladder. Sure, if you're playing the Overwatch League, maybe, but like, you and me, we're not like instigating 9,000 IQ plays, right? Like, we're just playing fucking Overwatch. The most we do as far as communication goes is like, hey everybody, let's Symmetra teleport to the point. Yeah, let's fucking go. That's the most coordination you see in Overwatch. You coordinate ultimates, you don't need to coordinate ultimates. Because one ultimate is, you use one ultimate first and it's a giant glowing beacon for the other person to use their ultimate. Like, the coordination in Overwatch is extremely simple. There's really not that much to talk about. There are way more complicated games that people don't use voice chat for at all, because you don't actually need it if you know how to play the game. It's just an easy thing to point out and blame when you lose. Let's see. We're at 32 minutes, so we're gonna do one more question for this week, because I got like 3 more, but like we got a lot of mileage out of the couple of questions that we did have. So the next question is, why people in Overwatch, a $30 competitive video game, very rarely use their mic, and how to force or encourage other people to use their mics? Moving on, that's the last question for this week's, but we've got to wait for this Eno game to finish. Well, the next game as well. We gotta go through the set. So unfortunately, I haven't actually been able to play Guilty Gear for like a week now, because my controller's broken. So that's very upsetting. I had another one coming, but that's still like another 2 weeks away, so I'll basically be the worst by the time that arrives. All of my fingers will have atrophied down to little chicken nuggets, and I'll not be able to fight anybody anymore. Such is life. Heaven forbid they actually like nerf Ramlethal or something while I'm waiting as well. Then it's really all over, because I can't play anyone else. It's Jayanna. I haven't put the time in. It's just how it is. When I do get the other controller, I'm still planning to go through that thing, or go through with that thing, where we, I pick a character and we're like, alright, let's play some fucking Faust, dog. The reason I keep saying Faust is easily the worst character in the game, so that would obviously be very fun for, you know, Schadenfreude, if nothing else. Faust is really bad. Like, he's got, like, very little going for him compared to everybody else in the game. Very unfortunate. Pretty much everybody agrees he's the worst character. Obviously, like, tier lists are kind of trash, because basically everybody is, like, modern fighting games, you're all just, like, slightly less good than the best characters, but, like, everybody's, broadly speaking, is good. This is why most people, when you see a tier list now, they only use, like, B through S, or, like, S plus through B, which, by the way, is the sign of a coward making the tier list. Because if your lowest rank is B, that just means D rank is B rank now, right? Like, it's one of those things where, like, if you're one of those people that goes, oh, you can't give a game a 10 out of 10 because no game's perfect, well, that just means 9 is 10 out of 10 now. So, you know, people who don't use the whole tier list are cowards. But, like, broadly speaking, modern fighting games, everybody's just slightly less good than the best characters. But, like, everybody agrees. Faust's the worst. Everybody, most other characters are kind of up for grabs on where people will put them. Ram and Soul are easily, like, two, like, top tiers. But then everybody else is kind of like, meh. But Faust, nobody is in disagreement that Faust is the worst character. the problem is his main gimmick, like, hurts him half the time, which is, like, throwing the random items that do things. The problem is the other guy can pick up the item, and then Faust gets fucked over. There's a little horn he throws that makes a little crowd of people run around the bottom of the screen. You might have seen that one in, like, trailers, if nothing else. Like, you can pick up the horn, and then they just hit Faust. It's fucking brutal. That was the last one, right? That was the last one. So thank you very much for watching. If you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. More than happy to answer. If you have a question you'd like to see answered on the show, please communicate through your preferred method. Comment, emails, ESP, whichever you prefer. Please let me know who you think you could fight in Overwatch, because I would love for somebody to earnestly look me in the eye and tell me they could fight Winston. With, like, pure belief in their eye, I could fight Winston. I started streaming on Twitch Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8 p.m. EST to 11 EST. There's links to the description. If you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middle quality in the future, and I hope you found the video helpful.